Hey everybody, welcome to the Hamakua Homestead. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and on this channel, I'm taking you along for the adventures here on the ranch. Today's adventure is part of a mini collaboration that I've put together with my sister Anna over at the Fermented Homestead. If you haven't subscribed yet, go click the buttons, subscribe to her channel. She's amazing. But today, I am going to start with the back to basics. I'm going to teach you how to pressure can. And specifically, I'm going to teach you how to pressure can chickpeas or garbanzo beans. The goal behind canning these is to make hummus. There's a bunch of different reasons why you would want to can garbanzo beans. You can throw them into any recipe at any time and add a bunch of protein. But one of the reasons, only one, there's a bunch, of course, is to make hummus. Whatever your goal is, doesn't matter. They're good to have on the pantry shelf. Today, I'm going to teach you how to can our garbanzo beans, and my sister Anna over at the Fermented Homestead, she is going to teach you guys how to turn this into hummus. And she's going to show you 3 separate recipes, which sound amazing. I haven't tried them yet, of course, but she is going to go ahead and show you a roasted garlic hummus, a chipotle hummus, and a fermented miso hummus. So be sure to get over there, subscribe to her channel real quick. In addition to showing you all of these delicious hummus recipes, she's also going to tell you how to make canning beans a little bit more gut friendly. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first step when you want to pressure can beans of any sort, and garbanzo beans are a bean, is you want to figure out what kind of a soaking method that you want to use. You can soak them overnight in water, so just so that they reabsorb everything, because obviously when you buy them from the store, they are completely dried out, so you want to rehydrate them. So you can do a soak overnight, which is what I did this time. You can do a quick soak method, which just means that you put them on the stove and let them boil for 5 minutes, and I think it's 5 minutes, and then go ahead and let them sit in their own juices for an hour after that before you use them, drain them, wash them. And then another method, which is not approved, so make sure you do your research before you do a dry canning method, which is you just simply put the beans in the jar, dry from the store, and then let them rehydrate in the pressure canner. Like I said, that way is definitely not approved, which basically means it's not tested. But today I did soak our garbanzo beans overnight, and we're just gonna go ahead and start filling up our jars so I can show you the process. Now, for canning beans of any sort, you do have options. You have the option of doing it in a pint-sized jar, or you have the option of doing it in a quart-sized jar. There's a couple other size options too, but these are the 2 main basic ones. So you just gotta decide which size is going to suit your needs with your family the best. Today we are going to be doing them in quart-sized jars, and the reason for that is because if we were to just do a pint size, the hummus would be gone immediately and we wouldn't have any left over to snack on later. So we're gonna go ahead and go with our quart-sized jars today. And the first thing that we're gonna do today is go ahead and fill up our jars, because I'm not sure how many jars I'm going to end up with the amount of chickpeas that I soaked. So let's go ahead and get our jars filled up. So we're gonna start out with 1 quart jar. A canning funnel or any kind of funnel is very helpful, just so that you don't spill all over the counter. It is not by any means necessary, but it is definitely helpful. I am not going to fill up our jars all the way, because even though these have been soaked, they are going to take on more moisture. and I don't want them to get gigantic and just, I don't want that. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at just before the shoulder goes into the more narrow spot. I feel like that will be more comfortable. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of these jars to about that level. So out of our 2 packages of garbanzo beans, we ended up with 4 quart jars. And that's gonna be 4 separate situations where we can make a good amount of hummus. So the next step, we're gonna go ahead and get these heated up. We're gonna fill them up with water, and we're going to fill up our canner as well. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to do this with a Presto pressure canner. I have an All-American as well, and they both work very, very well. But for a beginner, the Presto is definitely more affordable, but it is also easier in certain ways to use. And I'll just show you how to use this one. First thing, we're gonna fill it up with water to about 2 to 3 inches. Make sure that you check the instructions for your specific canner as to how much water you want to put in the bottom. Right, so now that this is heating up, we're gonna go ahead and start warming up water to put inside of our jars. Now there are 2 ways that you could do this. You could do it the hot pack method or the cold pack method. And the difference is exactly what it suggests. You could either start with cold water in your canner and cold water in your jars with cold jars. And that way they're all gonna come up to heat all together and you won't have any problems. Because, you know, if you go with one element that is extremely hot and one that is extremely cold, you're going to risk problems such as jar breaking, which is known as thermal shock. It will just bust your jar right inside your canner, and then you have such a waste and such a disappointment. Or you can do it like that, or you can do it with the hot pack method, where you start out with hot water in a hot canner, and then you have hot water putting inside of jars that then become hot. So you're putting hot things with hot things or cold things with cold things. You never want to do one and the other. So both our canner and our kettle are sufficiently warmed up to where we can start our process. So I'm gonna bring you down and show you how to fill up our jar, and where do you stop? So we are looking for a 1-inch headspace. And what that looks like is on this jar, there are 3 rings. It's a little bit hot. On this bottom ring right here, this is the 1-inch mark. Right here on this middle one is the 1/2 inch, and then on this one is a 1/4 inch. On this recipe, we are looking for a 1 inch. So I want our water and our beans to be right at that level. Each recipe that you are looking up will tell you exactly what headspace you're looking for. Most of the time with solids and liquids, soups, beans, meats, all of those are generally going to be 1 inch. Now that our jars are filled up, the next step, we want to make sure that there's no air trapped underneath. So we're gonna use a tool. You can get one of these debubblers from the store, or you can use a wooden chopstick, anything of the sort. I just wouldn't advise using metal because you don't want to scrape the inside of your glass jar. And what you're doing is you're basically just moving around all the contents to force all of the air bubbles to come back up. And once you have done that, you want to double check your headspace to make sure it didn't come down any, which is entirely possible because the air that was trapped under there is being replaced by water. So now we're just gonna double check that all of our jars are at a 1 inch, and they are, so we don't need to top them off any. Now the next thing that you wanna make sure you do is make sure that your rims are nice and clean, because if there's any debris or you know, in other recipes, if you had any salt or sugar or fat from any kind of animal products, that would interfere. You just want to make sure that that's nice and clean. And if you were using a recipe that had any kind of sugar or any kind of beef fat or pork fat, anything like that, you might consider, and I would highly suggest, using white distilled vinegar on your paper towel to cut through that grease or that sugar. But we don't have any of those in this particular recipe, so I'm not too worried about it. So after your rims are nice and clean, you're just gonna go ahead and pop your lids on there. Make sure they are centered as much as possible. Don't have to be too crazy picky about it. We have our lids on. We're gonna go ahead and put our rings on. And to do that properly, you will just wanna make sure that they are, I was gonna say nice and squared up, but it's definitely a circle. But you just wanna make sure that it's on there. You don't wanna apply too much pressure and you don't wanna apply too little of pressure. It's a pretty big gap to leave room for error, but you want to be careful because if you have it too loose, then they'll just wiggle around in the canner and that's not gonna work out. And if you tighten them too much, then it's going to buckle down. It won't allow the air to come out and your lid might buckle. So I'm gonna put this one in the canner and I'll show you that one more time. We're just gonna go ahead and stick this on. We're just gonna stick this on here like that and twist it down. This is what they call fingertip tight. You don't wanna use your wrist, you don't wanna use the strength of your elbow, just your fingertips. And that's the perfect amount. Now that our hot jars are inside of our hot canner, we're gonna go ahead and put the lid on. With a Presto pressure canner, you have just a couple different elements that you need to double check. You need to do a safety check. This little toggler right here, gotta make sure that's in place. Our vent pipe, you wanna make sure that you can see daylight through it. And then this other toggler right here, I have had it happen to where this came loose one time. So you want to double check because it wasn't coming up to pressure for quite a while, and that's what I found out was happening because it is a twist top. So you just want to make sure that that's nice and in place, just like that, up and down that way. And then your gauge. Make sure it's all good. The other thing you want to make sure that you check is your seal right here. If you haven't used it too many times, it can become kind of dried out, or you know, you would risk it cracking over time. So mine is good right now. If it wasn't good, if I felt like I needed to, I would go ahead and just put a layer of grease. You could use butter, olive oil, whatever you like, just to make sure that it doesn't dry out over time. Next thing, we're just gonna go ahead and line up our arrow right here with our arrow on the canner. Stick it right on there and twist it until your handles line up nicely. And that's it for right now. We're just gonna go ahead and wait for this to come all the way up to heat and start to vent, and I'll show you what that looks like when it happens. Now it is time for the next step. This has been on the heat for no more than half an hour. It's been less than that. You can see that this little toggle button has popped up. It doesn't necessarily always need to pop up in order to ensure that it is ready, for sure. We still have a whole nother 10-minute process to go through. You can see, that there is a steady stream of steam coming out of this pipe vent. And we want to make sure that that happens for a full 10 minutes. This is the process of replacing all of the air inside of the canner, and it is being replaced with steam, and that's what we need to happen, and it takes a full 10 minutes to do so. This might not pop up right now. Don't pay attention to that. That's okay. It will pop up when it's ready. Actually, in this particular batch, that is pretty early for it to be popping up. But like I said, I'm not worried about it. So in 10 minutes time, I will bring you back and show you the next step. Okay, it has been 10 minutes of full amount of steam coming through our steam vent. So now the next step with our Presto canner is to go ahead and put our weight on. I don't know if it's called a weight, it's a jiggler because it jiggles back and forth. So we're gonna set that on there. And depending on where you're at, what your elevation is, will depend on the amount of pressure that you need inside of your machine. So you can find this information on any one of these trusted websites, the USDA, the ball canning books. They'll tell you what your pressure is. I am at about 13 or so feet above sea level, so I'm looking for 15 pounds of pressure. This jiggler is going to start doing a little bit of a hula dance at 15 pounds of pressure inside of the mechanism. All right, we are at our hula dancing stage. I'm gonna show you what that looks like. This weight is gonna go ahead and wobble around like that until we are done with our pressure canning process. Now we're gonna go ahead and set our timer. We are gonna go ahead and let this happen for the next 75 minutes. Okay, the time has come. It has been 75 minutes. We're just gonna go ahead and simply turn off our burner. That's all we're gonna do. And then we're gonna let it come down from pressure. Our gauge is going to stop jiggling. Our thingy is going to pop down. We are going to let this cool down entirely all by itself. And when that process is done, I will show you exactly what that looks like as well, because this stage, we might be almost there, but we are not almost there. There's still a few more very important steps that we need to take to ensure as much success with our jar sealing as possible. So as we are waiting for our pressure canner to come down, you can see that it is significantly lower than 15 pounds of pressure, but we are going to continue to wait very patiently. Okay, our time is up and it is time to take our jars out of the canner. We let it come down from its temperature and its pressure all naturally by itself. Do not ever help it along. Don't put cool rags on it. Don't set it on something especially cold like snow or anything like that. Don't do it. Let it come down all of the way. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when we take our jars out of the canner. We're going to go ahead and leave our lid right here for just a few minutes to let the steam come out the side, but not come out too quickly, because that could interfere with our seals and cause siphoning if the hot jars come to a cold temperature too quickly. So we're just going to leave it cracked like this for a couple minutes. All right, we've let this sit for a couple minutes, let that initial burst of heat come out, and now we're going to go ahead and grab these jars out of here. This is what you should expect to see with a successful canning session. We have all 4 of our jars looking good. They are still boiling. They're looking good. I'm going to show you what they look like. They all look fantastic. I'm really excited with our turnout so far. We definitely won't know for sure until tomorrow afternoon, because it is turning evening now. It's almost 6 o'clock. So we will wait around 24 hours before we do anything with our jars. But a couple of signs, which are not foolproof, I have noticed in my own experience that when they're still bubbling when they come out, provided you haven't waited too long for them to cool down so much, when they are still bubbling, that is a very good sign that they will probably seal. Another good sign is the water level. Again, it is not foolproof. Sometimes the water level comes down quite a bit on whatever product you are canning, and sometimes it stays higher. It just depends on your environment. It depends on what you're canning, how you're canning, when you're canning. There are so many factors. But we are looking good right now. It looks like all 4 of them have already popped before I took them out of the canner, which is amazing. As I told you in the beginning of this video, the reason I'm canning these chickpeas / garbanzo beans is for making hummus. And I do want to let you guys know that my sister, Anna, over at the Fermented Homestead, she put out a video today doing exactly that. She was taking her homemade, home-canned garbanzo beans and turning it into a beautiful hummus recipe. So go over, check her out. She's going to show you exactly what to do with these now that they are done. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and let these cool on the countertop. Not directly on the countertop, of course. But I'm going to go ahead and let these cool for about 24 hours before I go ahead, take our rings off and put them up on the pantry shelf. I will bring you guys back and show you exactly what that process looks like. But that's all we need to do for tonight. I'm going to go ahead and leave these here to set and leave them for about 24 hours. I will bring you guys back tomorrow and show you the process of how to deal with these and put them away properly. All right, so it is the next day and we're gonna go ahead and get our jars cleaned up and put on the pantry, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that. These jars have sealed properly as far as I can see. They look great. We're gonna go ahead and take off our rings. They just come off real easy. And then we're gonna wanna go ahead and just lift them up, holding just the seal. That's how we know for sure that they are good. They're a little stuck to my towel, but that's okay. So the way that we know that they are sealed is when our lid and our jar are perfectly connected, holding it up just like that, nothing's happening. If your jar wasn't properly sealed, it would separate just in this process. And so you want to know that ahead of time for sure, because you don't want anything going south sitting on your pantry shelf. You want to know about it now so you can go ahead and stick it in the fridge, eat it in the next few days. But these ones will be great. We're going to go ahead and get them washed up. Now that our jars are washed and clean, we're just going to go ahead and rinse them off, make sure there's no soap residue on there. And set them aside so that they can dry. And after that, you want to make sure that your tops are perfectly dry so that it won't interfere with your Sharpie that you're using to label them. Then you just want to go ahead and label your jars with what it is and the date. I just generally do the month. I have to put 23 for the year. That's still messing me up because it's still January. You just want to make sure that you do what's inside the jar and at least the month and the year. You can put the day as well if you feel that necessary. That's really all there is to it. That is our basic lesson on how to pressure can chickpeas, garbanzo beans. And this is in preparation. The reason that we did this is so that we can have a ready-made chickpeas so that we can make hummus. So for the next step after this, what you want to go ahead and do is run over to Fermented Homestead. Anna is going to be showing you a recipe on how to use these homemade chickpeas and make a beautiful hummus recipe. So run on over there real quick. She's going to show you how to use these. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Hamakua Homestead. I'll see you again soon.